accuser, Virginia Roberts Giuffre, claims she was forced to have sex with Dershowitz at least 6 times. Dershowitz has forcefully denied ever having any contact with any of Epstein's young women. I spoke with Alan earlier this week about what he sees as the media's failings in its reporting on Jeffrey Epstein. Welcome, Alan. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you contacted me right after the story ran last month, and I agreed there's more to discuss on this. So my question is, do you believe that the media is withholding details or information that would exonerate you of any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein's accusers and discredit perhaps Virginia Giuffre and maybe some of the others?
It's not a question of belief. It's a question of fact. I sent to Netflix and to Julie Brown and to all the others all the evidence. For example, Virginia Giuffre tried to deep six a series of emails in which she's told by another journalist, Sharon Churcher, we know Dershowitz didn't do anything wrong. There's no proof he did anything wrong, but you should put him in your book because he's famous. He did Reversal of Fortune. It'll help you with your book pitch. And then she put me in her book as somebody she did not have sex with.
Listen.
I gave that to everybody.
All right.
Nobody has been willing to put that on.
Well, I spoke to some of these people. You mentioned Julie Brown. Julie Brown, of course, works for the Miami Herald, and she's done a lot of reporting on this over the course of several years. She sent me an email. She said, Alan Dershowitz is in a panic. She said, Dershowitz has never shown me or my editors any proof at all. There are no details we have left out because nearly all the conversations we've had with him, he has demanded that they be off the record. He wants to publish information as sourced only. Is that true?
Totally false. I have a recording. She allowed me to record our meeting, and in the meetings with her editor, and it's all a matter of record because it's on tape. I showed her this material. I gave her the material. I wrote a letter to her on the record letter saying she could use the material on the record in which I provided all this information. I also provided it to Netflix pursuant to an agreement with Netflix that they would put it on the air.
Filthy Rich you're referring to, it was, you know, sort of a docudrama. It was entertainment. But you had fair voice in there, Alan, and then you came afterwards and you said that no one should believe anything that was in that documentary. But you were in it. You were in it, and you said you never did anything with any of these young women.
There's a big difference between saying I didn't do anything and playing a tape by her own lawyer, David Boies, in which he said she was wrong, simply wrong to accuse you. You couldn't have been in any of the places she said you were at. I gave them that tape. A tape by her best friend.
They said that that's not usable, that it's not clear who they're talking about.
It was absolutely usable.
I'm repeating what they said to me.
Let me tell you, the United States government and the district attorney have heard the tape, and they've credited it, and they've said it's correct. Why do you think the United States Attorney's Office has not used Virginia Giuffre as either a witness or a victim?
Okay, let me ask you something.
In both indictments, they went around her, and I think the question the media should be asking is, does the United States government believe that she has credibility problems? I have her own lawyer, Brad Edwards, on television, wait a minute, saying that he doesn't believe that she had sex with any prominent people,
including Prince Andrew. There's photographs of her with Prince Andrew.
He's used the word, no, it doesn't, there's no photographs of them having sex. He has said no prominent people after investigation will be involved. He has categorically denied that Leslie Wexner had sex with her, even though she swore under oath that she
on the media issue,
Alan,
to what end would the media not report these things if they knew them to be true?
Well, first of all, they are true because they're self-proving. This is her own words. Why won't the media put that on? They are afraid of being accused of victim shaming. Now, I'm the victim here. I'm a victim of a false accusation. I never met this woman. I never heard of her. We have tapes with her best friend, perfectly hearable, in which she says that she was pressured to falsely accuse me in order to get $1 billion from Leslie Wexner. Nobody has played that tape. Nobody has shown the emails. The emails are self-proven.
Have you given that tape to the Miami Herald?
Yes, of course I have.
They say they don't have anything from you that they can use, nothing.
I have a tape recording of a conversation at my home with Julie Brown and her editor and my wife. And you can hear in the tape recording, I'm giving them all of this information.
Could you send that to me?
I gave it to, and I gave it to the New Yorker. I gave it to Netflix. I've given it to the U.S. Attorney's Office. I've given it to the District Attorney's Office. Remember, I'm the one who sought to unseal all the material. I'm the one who took this case to the FBI. I'm the one
Okay.
who wrote an op-ed piece saying to the
Let's-
FBI, please investigate me and
Right.
investigate her.
We've talked about
One of
those.
us is committing perjury, and it's she who's
and
committing
she has said that
perjury.
too. Now, Alan, Ghislaine Maxwell, who was the former girlfriend or
Right.
current of Jeffrey Epstein, there's been rumors that she has videotapes. If she
I hope
does,
so.
you hope so.
I hope so.
You think
Oh, that would be
you
my
will be
greatest
completely
dream.
exonerated?
Of course. I said on day one, I hope there are videotapes. I hope there are photographs. I hope there are witnesses. There will be no proof because there can't be proof. I never met this woman. I have overwhelming proof that she has admitted she never met me. In the emails and in the book manuscript, she describes one incident where she said she saw me, but she denies having had sex with me.
Well,
she said she had sex with George Mitchell. She said she had sex with many other people.
She told it
but she never said she had sex with me.
NBC, and she certainly said it in the Netflix documentary.
I'm talking about back when, close to when it happened. She went to the FBI. She told them who she had sex with, not me. She went to her lawyer. She told them initially who she had sex with, not me. Then her lawyers pressured her, and then she started naming me at the end of 2014.
As we said, we have no reason to disbelieve you. But Alan, you know how the media works.
Believe me, because I have all the evidence.
You know that your former client, Jeffrey Epstein, has also benefited from relationships with the media. I mean, he called the Graydon Carter at Vanity Fair. He called Marty
his
Barron.
Problem. That's not my problem.
I
That's
know,
his problem.
but he got favorable treatment in the media by. What I'm saying is, you know how that works, and you know. If you,
all I know is there are facts out there.
You have been harassing, to an extent, the Miami Herald people. You called the Pulitzer Board. You sent tweets.
No, I wrote a letter. Let me tell you what I did. I wrote a letter to the Pulitzer Board outlining everything I gave them. She never disputed that. Everything I gave them. I said, this is what she had. She didn't use it. This is what I gave her. She didn't use it. This is what she promised me she would put in the story. She had a vested interest, a Pulitzer Prize vested interest in presenting Virginia Giuffre. Of course not, because she's not a journalist, really. She's somebody who works for the other side. She had a vested interest in presenting Giuffre, in presenting Giuffre as a credible person. And I proved that she lied about Al Gore, Tipper Gore. She lied about so many people. She went through the Rolodex of Jeffrey Epstein. And so the media has to start investigating her the way they investigated the accusers of Kavanaugh, the accusers of Biden. Virginia Giuffre is not believed by her own lawyers,
Alan,
not believed by the United States government, but believed by the media.
All right.
Please investigate.
We're on it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Phew. That was a little intense. Anyway, Tom Fiedler, you were the former editor of the Miami Herald. First, I want to say a couple of things. Alan Dershowitz is right when he says we have not fully vetted Virginia Giuffre. We haven't, and we've taken her pretty much on face value. No one's really drilled down, and frankly, there are a lot of holes in her story. On the other hand, Tom, this notion that the Miami Herald, the New Yorker, Netflix, all these media outlets and news organizations would somehow be in cahoots or in conspiracy to hold on to this information because somehow it's going to bolster their bottom line. It makes no sense to me. It's conspiratorial nonsense, in my opinion, that all of these news organizations would, for the same reason, not use whatever this exonerating information is that Alan claims to have sent to all of them. And by the way, I did ask him for it. I haven't heard back. I just did the interview yesterday, but I hope he sends it to us too.
Yeah, I almost don't know where to start. I'm almost speechless by what listening to that interview, which I think the one thing that does come through that seems to me undeniable is that he is in a panic about this. He has been fixated on this issue for a long time. Now, I have no idea what the discussions were that went on between Alan Dershowitz, Julie Brown, and her editor, the investigations editor at the Miami Herald. But I do think that this whole idea, and he came back to it and more or less slid over it, of sourcing is critically important here, because Dershowitz apparently has a habit of giving information to people or tapes or things that he thinks are relevant there, in the hope that reporters will use that information but not attribute it to him. And this idea, is it on the record or off the record, I think he had so thoroughly mixed up that anything that Julie Brown used, I think, would have been problematic, as knowing, did I violate a confidence or not? I wasn't there, so I'm not going to be objective about this, but I know Julie Brown. I hired Julie Brown. I know the investigations editor. I know that they are both sophisticated about this, knowledgeable about what's on the record or off. What is particularly infuriating to me was the effort that Dershowitz made to go to the Pulitzer board and prevent the Miami Herald's work from being considered for a Pulitzer Prize. I can tell you with almost certainty that Miami Herald doesn't do investigations to win Pulitzer Prizes. The Herald does investigations because that's our role. That's the right thing to do. The idea that Dershowitz would go to the Pulitzer board to keep a prize from being awarded, it absolutely is, I think, I can't come with a word stronger than disgusting in it. But it overlooks the fact that there were literally months, if not years, of work that Julie had done to bring this story forward. And it was not about Jeffrey entirely at all. She was one piece and a questionable piece of an otherwise extremely solid project that went on a long time.
Okay. Emily, has Dershowitz sued the Miami Herald for libel?
I don't believe so. I'm not positive on that. I know he's got, no, I don't think so.
Well, I'll look forward to that because that's his recourse. And I agree with you and with Professor Dershowitz that if he's being unfairly maligned and by multiple media outlets, and it's become a meme really, and in entertainment vis-a-vis the Netflix documentary, that's a terrible thing to happen to someone if they're innocent, a really terrible thing. I grant that. But, Alan Dershowitz doesn't know anything about the media other than that he constantly wants to be on it. And when Alan Dershowitz opines about truth, I'm carried back to a quote that it's actually something he wrote in one of his books. And this is a quote from a PBS interview he did about the O.J. Simpson case, where he's talking about how prosecutors who believe a defendant is guilty, well, they only care about ultimate truth. Quote, if you're the defense attorney, you care deeply about intermediate truth, but you tend to neglect ultimate truth. So everybody likes certain truths and dislikes other truths, depending on whether it serves their interests, end quote. There you go.
I think in terms of the media that the sex allegation is the something shiny he would really like us all to focus on, instead of the fact that the plea deal he brokered could be in violation of the Crime Victims Act. The Crime Victims' Rights Act, that there are bigger issues here, and his part in this is pretty small. So he's trying to defend his reputation in terms of the sexual allegation, but that's not really the biggest part of this story. I also see a lot of mixing up between news media and media in general. Netflix isn't the news. No. I'm not sure why he's expecting them to act the way reporters and editors and researchers and fact checkers would for this particular documentary, which really is infotainment. I think a lot of people are interested in the something shiny because it's salacious and clicky, and there are bigger issues at play here that are going ignored while we focus on this element, which mainstream media has actually covered. They've said that he's defended himself, and he's still going on about it.
Lila mentions a confusion of different types of media, so I thought I should mention that Alan Dershowitz is now threatening to sue CBS over words spoken about him by an entirely fictional character in a fictional series, and that just really
they use his name and they call him a shyster. It's pretty bad. Dan.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's absurd. I don't think that he's serving his cause well with the media strategy he's pursuing. Essentially, he's trying to prove a negative, and you really can't prove a negative. If he said nothing, I don't think it would change anybody's view of his role or lack thereof in this. I think that where his case falls apart in his interview with you is his essentially saying that Julie Brown of the Miami Herald is lying. And I think that when people weigh the work that Julie Brown has done over the years in breaking the Jeffrey Epstein story, that just doesn't add up.
That's true. All right. There have been dozens of interviews with the president since his election, but until now, none has caught the attention of the universe. Australian journalist Jonathan Swan of Axios did what no journalist has successfully done to date: push back hard with fire and facts. Axios on HBO bills itself as documentary news, often featuring one-on-one interviews with prominent people. Jonathan Swan's 35-minute interview with the president first aired Monday, and it was this exchange that caught everyone's attention.
And, you know, there are those that say, you can test too much. You do know that.
Who says that?
Oh, just read the manuals, read the books.
Manuals?
Read the
What
books.
manuals?
Within hours, a 3-minute clip posted on Twitter had 3 million views, and by morning, Jonathan Swan was a household name.
So remarkable in what he said, you should hear it for yourself.
CNN ran the entire interview at least twice, and Swan later appeared as a guest.
I wasn't trying to score a point or a gotcha. What I was trying to get him to do was grapple with the question of why.
Specifically, why America has more deaths per capita than most other countries, a fact Trump refused to accept.
Take a look. Right here. Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population.
You can't do that.
The interview made headlines around the country, brought praise to Swan for his fact-based pushback, and at the same time created a popular new meme, the puzzled face.
He doesn't normally encounter this type of interview.
Look, I give him credit for doing it, and we have an invitation out to Joe Biden.
We hope he accepts, Jonathan. Hey, John, you've done a million of these kinds of interviews yourself, and I have to say, Jonathan, there's a little bit of you and Jonathan Swan, I should say, or the other way around. Anyway, what did you think of the interview?
Well, that's high praise. I thought he did a great job. And keep in mind, this was closely preceded by another similar interview that Chris Wallace of Fox News did with Trump. So maybe what we're seeing is less the emergence of the hero journalist and more the complete meltdown, the complete blubbering meltdown of the human formerly known as Donald Trump. But look, you're not there as a journalist, particularly a political journalist, questioning people in power to make friends and to set up a lunch later or to curry favor. It's hard for beat reporters, and I don't believe Swan is specifically a White House beat reporter. I think it's harder for beat reporters who have to constantly be interacting with the same people. They walk a fine line. But there's no reason why you can't go in there. You don't have to be shouting and yelling at the person and berating them, but you should know your facts, as Swan did, and be ready to rebut garbage, and that's all he did.
Yep.
Absolutely. I mean, Jonathan Swan really did a terrific job, as John said. What I found a little disconcerting about it is that as good as Swan was, you really wouldn't call it a back and forth. I mean, President Trump was kind of in full pour it on mode, and Swan would just kind of sit there and occasionally try to interrupt him and steer him back on track and fact check him in real time. And so as good as Swan was, it was nothing like any sort of a normal interview with anybody.
No.
But I don't think with President Trump you can have a normal interview.
I'll tell you what I found interesting about it. Part of it was Swan's body language, sitting in that chair. Trump he had that forward posed in the starting blocks kind of a position, which he likes to take. Swan was sitting back, his coat was open, he had his papers. John, to use the word you did, and I think it was very important, is he was completely there in the moment, there in listening and ready to have the conversation. That seems to me, you know this far better than I do, to be very difficult if you're an anchor, say, on television, where you may have a producer in your ear saying, we're counting down the seconds, or there's something else you have to think of, and so forth. With Swan, he had the luxury and has the luxury in that show of really just focusing on that moment, on the president's words, and wherever he can, sit back. And he used that line. He said, just keep asking, why this, why that, why? The most powerful question, I think, in all of journalism, but it demands an answer, and rarely do we see it as well as he was able to get it there.
I think that one reason why this interview seemed so remarkable to so many people is we are so used to these fawning celebrity interviews with softball questions that are intended to simply portray the guest in a positive light. And with this particular guest, we see far more interviews like that on his favored news outlets and on his favorite news shows. We see a lot of interviews with shows that aren't news shows like Fox and Friends. So it was really remarkable to see someone ask the tough questions and try to hold their guest accountable, try to get them to explain where they're sourcing their information from. And I also think it was a great example to a lot of young reporters on why you need to do your prep, why you need to know everything inside and out, why you should anticipate what your guest is going to say so you know what the follow-ups are instead of trying to sit there in the moment coming up with an interesting follow-up. So I hope this is an interview that J-School professors show their students, because it had some really great tactics and showed a lot of great prep work that you don't necessarily see as much anymore.
You know, somebody made the comment that these are the kinds of things that he doesn't normally do because he likes to pick predictable people. Anybody know why I know Jonathan Swan's covered him for a long time, but anybody know why he granted him a one-on-one?
I think he heard HBO. Axios on HBO. Maybe he was thinking ratings and audience reach. He does know how to play that angle with the media.
And if you think
he
back,
keeps giving access to Maggie Haberman of the New York Times, and that rarely goes well for him.
Yeah.
And if you think back, he's had a number of these one-on-one pre-tape disasters. Think of the Lester Holt interview where he started blabbering on about how he had to get rid of Comey, and it was all about the Russia thing. That led to his impeachment.
Yeah.
He just can't handle a direct exchange with someone with a clue who's not a psychopath.
All right, time now for our rants and raves. We'll start with Dan Kennedy.
I have a rant for the way that the Boston Globe handled its endorsement of congressional candidate Jake Auchincloss. They endorsed him. They've been doing these early because of early voting. And then within a day or two, they announced that they were going to have a one-on-one conversation with him that will be taking place this Monday that you can watch at home. And they said that it raised the prospect that they might revoke the endorsement. And then the editorial page editor, Veena Venkataraman, tweeted that we're going to get some answers, but no, we're not going to consider unendorsing him. And then finally, somebody from the news side, business columnist Shirley Leung, who used to be the interim editorial page editor, writes another column saying that, well, actually, the best choice would have been another candidate, Jesse Mermel. And the whole thing has just been a mess.
That was gutsy on Shirley's part, I thought.
Yeah,
gutsy.
it was, absolutely.
Yeah, I happen to think she's right, too. All right, Lila.
So I have a rave for the 19th, which you can find at 19thnews.org. It's a new initiative that launched this past Sunday, and it's focused on news and serving the people who are currently underserved by the media, mostly women and people of color. They have a new summit coming up next week, with some really fascinating guests. Kamala Harris, Tammy Duckworth, Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, and they're focused just on politics and policy and the big news item. No opinion, no purses, handbags, lipstick, kittens, puppies. But I'm really excited to see this venture. Next week's summit ends with an interview between Meghan Markle, Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, rather, and the CEO and co-founder of the 19th, Emily Ramshaw, who is formerly the editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. I'm really looking forward to hearing what they have to say.
All right, Tom. Tom's first. Sorry.
All right, I have a rave sort of, although it's a rave that falls in the "it's about time" kind of thing, and that's for Facebook's decision this week to slap essentially a warning label on and refuse to post the latest lie from the president regarding I think virtual immunity was the word that he used about young people and COVID-19, only to learn as recently as today that a 7-year-old in Texas has died of COVID-19. But this step has long been sought by others for Facebook. And after Twitter had done this, quite a long time ago. I think Facebook finally decided that enough is enough, and here they'll go forward. Also, a quick little rave for TikTok. I don't know what TikTok's future is, that a little bit up in the air, but they have said that they will work with respected journalistic fact-finding organizations before they will allow things to be posted there.
All
so
right.
Good moves.
Good, I agree. John.
Okay, forgive me for being a little BC-centric here, but I want to throw a rave out for two of my colleagues, Lisa Hughes and Bill Shields. Lisa is marking 20 years in the business this summer. Shields, 40 years. This is at BZ, I should say, at BZ. These are astonishing numbers compared to Shields. I'm a piker at only 30 years in Boston TV. But Shields is just a great guy, really funny, a very well-respected street reporter. Everybody knows Lisa Hughes. She's not only an excellent anchor and journalist, but does more philanthropic appearances than just about anybody in town. And, you know, they're both not from here. And it takes a long time to be accepted when you're from out of town. These two have pulled it off, and I'm really
I'm
proud
dating
of
myself, but I remember the day Bill Shields was hired, and I met him very shortly after that. I was working at the competition, WCVB. All right, well, finally tonight, I have a rave for a group of women in the White House press corps who they were in a press conference being given by Kayleigh McEnany, and she was skipping over people and not letting people finish. And these women started ceding their time to each other, to Yamiche Alcindor, that's Jess Bidgood on the right, and then they were texting each other in the end, explaining why they had done that, because if they hadn't ceded time or hadn't given some to, no one would have had an opportunity to speak. Kayleigh McEnany was playing favorites and skipping people over. Anyway, it's the kind of thing that should happen more often in the White House press corps. People just take their own time, and that's what it is, but this was the right thing to do at the right time. All right, that is it for our show. Tell us what you think. Email us, tweet us, send us a comment. We're always on at beatthepress.org. I'm Emily Rooney. Thanks for watching.
Each night on Greater Boston, we go in depth on important stories. We talk to the people behind those stories, and we bring you expert insight and a wide array of views on issues which you care about and which you should. That's Greater Boston, Monday through Thursday at 7.
Enjoy the Boston Symphony Orchestra from the comfort of your home. Evening at the Pops, tonight at 9 on WGBH2.
On Masterpiece Mystery, no matter how many cases